short and go down. Booming short to go.
Also have enough air.
It is intellectually engaging.
And you can only become a leader when there are problems.
I like that.
The same applies to Rwanda, Burundi. So what are we federating?
Whether rights from another country can be, somebody must be there to hold everybody accountable.
But at the moment, we would rather deal with what we have, make it right.
First of all, we as elites of Uganda, we have made Museveni the issue. I can tell Museveni is not the problem of Uganda. The problems of Uganda are much deeper. We can change the next 20 presidents and we'll still be this roundabout.
Deeply incisive.
The different political forces that we have in the country, in the country, we don't seem to really have achieved that minimum political consensus over certain things.
Authentically symbolic and insightful. Behind the headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charles Odongotho.
Very welcome.
Probably the most experienced talk show moderator in Uganda, with a team of illustrious panelists. Honorable Abdul Katuntu, a seasoned legislator, politician, and senior lawyer.
The worst that can happen to any society is to have a press which is ignorant.
Honorable Margaret Mohanga, a veteran journalist, legislator, entrepreneur, and development consultant. And Ramadan Gobi, an economist and university don.
Only audit institutions, effective budget tracking, e-government, e-procurement, and curbing illicit financial flow, they are the only practical ways of fighting corruption.
So, all on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Also have enough air.
It is intellectually engaging.
And you can only become a leader when there are problems.
I like that.
The same applies to Rwanda, Burundi. So what are we federating?
Whether rights from another country can be, somebody must be there to hold everybody accountable.
But at the moment, we would rather deal with what we have, make it right.
First of all, we as elites of Uganda, we have made Museveni the issue. I can tell Museveni is not the problem of Uganda. The problems of Uganda are much deeper. We can change the next 20 presidents and we'll still be this roundabout.
Deeply incisive.
The different political forces that we have in the country, in the country, we don't seem to really have achieved that minimum political consensus over certain things.
Authentically symbolic and insightful. Behind the headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charles Odongotho.
Very welcome.
Probably the most experienced talk show moderator in Uganda, with a team of illustrious panelists. Honorable Abdul Katuntu, a seasoned legislator, politician, and senior lawyer.
The worst that can happen to any society is to have a press which is ignorant.
Honorable Margaret Mohanga, a veteran journalist, legislator, entrepreneur, and development consultant. And Ramadan Gobi, an economist and university don.
Only audit institutions, effective budget tracking, e-government, e-procurement, and curbing illicit financial flow, they are the only practical ways of fighting corruption.
So, all on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
A warm welcome this evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. This Wednesday, the 28th July 2021. The guests are here and the discussion must begin. We are going to be looking at the much talked about 200 million shillings for cars for MPs. The people, some of them are here, the MPs. Some of the people they work with are here. We have some who will be online joining us by Zoom. But let me start from my extreme left. We have Andrew Mwenda, veteran journalist, and he is the MD or CEO of the Independent News Magazine. And calls himself old man of the clan, even when he's not yet 50. Andrew, you're most welcome back to the show.
No, Charles, that's very unfair. I was born on 3rd October 1912. So in the next 2 months, I'm turning 109. You can even see my gray hair on TV. Sure.
Next to Andrew is Chris Obore. He speaks for Parliament of the Republic of Uganda. He is the director in charge of communication. Chris Obore, someone said he has not just 9 but 10 lives. He's here on the Behind the Headlines. Chris, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Charles.
And good evening.
And good evening to you. I have one life. The 10 lives I don't understand. I'm not a cat.
Charles is saying that you are more than a cat.
On Chris's right is Dr. Fred Muhumuza, and he is a development policy analyst and teaches economics at Makerere University, The Hill, as they know it. Dr. Muhumuza, welcome back to this show.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here, and good evening, our viewers.
Thank you. Next to, on my left here, is Honorable Lilian Aber. Lilian Aber is one of the new MPs in the Parliament of Uganda. She represents the people of Kitgum district, and just recently, I think last week or the week before last, she was elected as publicity secretary of the NRM.
General Secretary.
General?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Thanks for the correction. Of the NRM caucus in Parliament. Good to have you, Lilian.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, my fellow panelists, and thank you. Good evening to the viewers.
Thank you. And we will be having, my technical team is working on connecting Sarah Birete. Sarah Birete is joining us online from, I think, Nairobi or somewhere near there, but she will be telling us better. Sarah, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, fellow panelists and viewers.
Thank you very much, and it's good to have you on the show, and you probably had the topic we are going to be discussing, but I want to start by I was the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Nabanja, has just announced that the presidential address will actually be on Friday this week at 8 p.m., not on Saturday as had been announced earlier. So take that in mind, and let's communicate with the neighbor and others so that they get the information and that change right. I've just spoken to her, and she has confirmed that the president will address the nation on COVID and related matters on Friday this week, beginning 8 p.m. Let's start the discussion. Gentlemen and ladies, there have been so much talk about Parliament starting on a good note, and then, of course, the public getting some agitated, irritated, furious, and talking about how can Parliament be allocating itself. Chris will tell us with probably the right figure about 100+ billion shillings in buying cars. One thing I must say from the outset is that it was in the budget, but the question is, was the timing proper? Could it have been postponed and pushed maybe to another financial year, given the difficulties of finances that the country is going through right now, COVID, vaccines, and all these kind of things? That is the discussion we are going to be having. Let me start with the MP herself. The question that many people have been asking, are MPs being insensitive to the public, to the issues that are affecting the public right now? Couldn't you wait? What is the hurry about the vehicles? Is it a must? Is it a priority that must be had right now? Why did you MPs give yourselves, or why did you accept Parliament to give you cars worth all that money right now instead of later?
Thank you very much, Charles. First of all, I want to make it clear that the money allocated for buying cars for MPs is an entitlement which has been budgeted for, and that budgeting took place way back before we were even elected. And this is not the first time cars are being given to members of parliament. It has been a norm. That's what has been happening before. You talked about the timing. Yes, we are in a very difficult situation, yes. But members of parliament must work. Work must go on. We have to work. Policies must be made. Budget has to be worked on. We have to implement all the things which have been agreed upon. So it's not about the timing, or it's about why they shouldn't get the money or not. You see, Charles, if we look at this money we are talking about, it sounds huge. But if there are two options here on handling this issue of the cars, and I really think that next year we don't sit here. I mean, in the next election, after the next election, we don't come here again to discuss the issue of the cars, because every time we are talking about the cars. For me, as a member of parliament, I would say maybe we just stop giving MPs money and then procure the cars and give it to them. But the question here is, how much would a brand new car, or a car that can be used by a member of parliament driving from Nakapiripirit cost? This is 200 million being allocated for a car. And by all means, a member of parliament will only be subjected to buy a second-hand car, which is already used. And therefore, if you're buying a car, for example, of 70 million, you are going to pay taxes of around 90 or 100 million. But on the public outcry, or the way the media is putting it, 200 million for the MPs, an MP has to go to the constituency, must come back to parliament and deliberate on the issues, perform their legislative roles. How do you expect the members of parliament to move?
Would you say, therefore, that the public is being unfair in judging MPs or judging parliament for this matter in
Absolutely,
this way?
Because we need to do our work.
Do you think
Absolutely.
that they have not understood these dynamics better, or do you think that they are right to express their disappointment?
No, it has not been understood clearly. You see, if you look at even the technical team, a commissioner is entitled to a car. He's driving a V8 car, which costs government around 400 million. An MP is being given money that can only buy a second-hand car that will definitely break down even before the 5 years elapses. You know the cost of cars, vehicles now. A director in a ministry is driving a car that costs 300 or 500 million, brand new. This money given to MPs can only purchase second-hand cars. And how do you expect someone to move from Kitgum to parliament? It's absolutely insane. You can't move, you can't eat your cake and have it. So I think the MPs are really being considerate and saying, yes, we are going to take the money which is allocated, which in fact government is giving with the right hand and taking with the left hand, because you're going to grab taxes around 100 million or 80 million from that 200 million you're allocating.
Thank you very much. Chris, you have a difficult job explaining this, but Lillian says the public has not understood this. Do you think it is an issue of the public not understanding? Is the public being unfair to Parliament? Or is something amiss? Why did Parliament decide at this time and not to say, maybe let's do it later?
I don't think it's the issue of the public. The public is a general term. I think majority of the public who elect the members of Parliament expect their members want to be relevant. But I think it is the interest groups that are not fair to members of Parliament. I can say it's a section of the elite that is not fair to members of Parliament. And in the policy dynamics, those are group interests. And they are right to advance the way they do, but we ask for clarity. That's what I try to explain. It is legitimate to critique the way Parliament works. It's legitimate to critique the expenditure of Parliament, but critique with clarity and separate issues. That's where we are having a mix-up. It becomes a misleading course to the general public from the few interested parties or interested groups. Agreeable, COVID is a dangerous situation, and it's global. It's not limited to Uganda. And later on, I will learn from Dr. Mumuza, whom I respect much in development economics, more about what could have been done better. But my view is, COVID did not come to say, let everything else get into abeyance, or any other service outside fighting COVID becomes undesirable and therefore must stop. I don't think that's what it meant. Because the economists will agree also that much as the concern is about the economy and what, but the economy is interconnected. You do not want to grow one sector of the economy by leaving the other out. And I don't think there is any sector that grows without the other. If you want trade to develop, it does not stop roads from being done, because the roads facilitate trade. And the roads without trade mean nothing. That's the little. I'm not an expert in economics. I'll learn later. So, yes, COVID is a life-threatening situation. But you must accept that all arms of government must operate. That is when maybe a solution can be got. So if the judiciary must operate, the executive must work, so is the legislature. Because the three arms, there's a reason why they exist. They complement the other. How do we want the performance of the health sector to be monitored without a functioning parliament? I think that would be dangerous. Maybe we test that. And that would not be accepted by those who cherish democracy in the Western way. They will quickly say, we are under a dictatorship. So, if a legislature must operate, what are the requirements for it to work? Because members of parliament do not all come from Nakawa or City Square.
Where you can walk to work.
She's from Kitugum, another is from Kisoro, another is from Abim, the other is from Intoroko. But where is the workplace? Kampala. And they are the only people, employees, public workers, who have 2 workstations. You must be present in the house. If they are not, you will come here and say, the MPs are not working. But they also must be present in the constituency. If they are not in the constituency, the voters say they have abandoned us. So in that situation, there must be facilitation for this member to be able to report to work. In our circumstance, transport must be availed. I asked a question today when I was responding to one of the critics, that are we submitting that only the wealthy who can afford own cars should be members of parliament, so that when they come to parliament, there's no need to give them vehicles? Not at all. That would still undermine the choices of people. Because you being rich does not necessarily be the only qualification for you to be a good leader. So if people choose their member of parliament, and this is a British president, we all understand the evolution of parliamentary system in Britain. It used to be the Lords, but people said no. The Lords alone cannot be our representatives. We have our poor person here in Newcastle. They must go to London to legislate for us. Therefore, the state must take care, facilitate this member to represent us. This is how facilitation of members came about. So in our situation, this is the same situation, that we have elected members of parliament, they have been sworn in. Even when you have COVID, there is relevance of parliament. It has to pass the necessary policies, the necessary legislations, even the budget we are talking about. It is the same parliament that passed it and appropriated. Remember, they passed the budget for buying of vaccines. They even passed supplementary budgets for supporting the health sector. All other sectors suffered budget cuts, including parliament. I gave information on what is affected in the parliament. That means parliament itself acknowledges that COVID-19 is a threat. But we do not stop the activities of parliament. We have reduced certain activities to enable the executive perform its duties. But this one of transport, if a member is going to a beam and they can't come to Kampala, how does they come and legislate? That is the reason why the facilitation was given. And as parliament, the parliamentary commission, as you know, its existence is to take care of the welfare of members of parliament and staff.
Good.
Why? So that they are able to execute the mandate given to them by the Constitution.
Good. Just a clarification before I bring in Andrew. What are some of those critical budget lines that you decided to forego for now?
I can remember of head AP's allowances reduced by 6 billion. Staff allowances reduced. Travel abroad cut by 19 billion. Committee operations cut by 27 billion. This I can get over only 78 billion was cut.
So actually the budget cuts you also suffered, 40% general?
Precisely, we suffered
across
that.
board?
Yes.
Good.
But the allocation given to us is where the money for vehicles came. And this one is once in 5 years.
So as parliament, you thought it wise that the vehicles are a priority area, but you will forego other areas.
Why? Because for parliament to function, there must be members of parliament
to come. Thank you very much. Andrew, I saw a tweet, I wish I could extract it, where you sounded complaining that the MPs have allocated themselves this money for these vehicles. Now you hear this kind of explanation. It sounds convincing, doesn't it? What's your view of the timing, the decision of Parliament and MPs, and the general dynamics of this discussion on the monies that we are talking about?
Actually, Charles, you know, my tweet was a kind of challenge. It was a challenge on what do we understand about our politics and the kind of democratic institutions we have adopted from, say, the British or the Europeans, and the kind of society that we have. And I think there is always that conflict. But let me say this. I believe that there are two issues in this debate. One is technical and legal. The other is moral and political. Legally and technically, a person can argue that this money was budgeted for. It is an entitlement. I have seen my granddaughter Margaret Mahanga arguing this. It's an entitlement by members of parliament that it was written in the budget. Members of parliament have to travel around. One would wonder, how did they campaign if they do not have means? Why should the government now provide them means? Because they had to crisscross every part of their constituency to win elections. Why do they need the government support? Remember that I'm arguing it again on the technical level. So I said one matter is legal and technical, and that's what Chris Obore is arguing that this money was budgeted for, and they have this entitlement from a technical and legal perspective. They should be given this money. The other matter, of course, is moral and political. If you argue from this angle of morals and politics, you would say the optics don't look good. I don't know whether you understand the issue of optics, that it may not look good. For me, the question is, if we argue optics, but whose optics are we talking about? Remember that we have we have a conflict in a society like Uganda. That conflict is that we have an urban educated population, which constitutes about 30% of Uganda, whose view of politics is largely shaped by the ethical and moral foundations of a modern bureaucratic capitalist state, based on what we inherited from Britain. The other public we have is ordinary Ugandans, less educated, or we can say semi-literate in rural areas, who are peasants. They constitute 70% of this population, and therefore 70% of the voters. Their ethical and moral imperatives are different from the ethical and moral imperatives of the elite, of me and you, the elite in urban areas. What do they actually think? Right now, we don't have a scientific opinion poll to explain this to us. But I can say two things. That these two groups, the educated urban elite and the less educated rural population, do not share common moral foundations. What is considered morally and legally right to the urban elite may not be what is considered morally and ethically correct within the perspective of the largest majority of the voters, who are 70%. And I think that is the contradiction that Uganda faces, that we have the moral and ethical imperatives of the state inherited from our colonial background from the British, which conflict with the moral and ethical foundations of our people who are based in rural areas. Surely, let me ask you guys, if we were to ask an ordinary man in Masaka, or in Pongduong, or in Kanyandahi, where I come from, should an MP have a car? What would that person say? I am inclined to believe that many of them would see it correct, that an MP should have means of movement. To be a member of parliament makes you a big man and a big woman, and a big man and a big woman is entitled to particular privileges which legitimate their power, which make them which make the ordinary person understand their position in society. So I think that the politics and the state in Africa is always at that intersection of that conflict. What is morally right for an urban person who has been exposed to the ethical and moral foundations of a modern state may not be what is morally right for a person in the rural areas. Now, let me come to the second point of a practical nature. It is very difficult for me to make a judgment on a matter like this, because I ask myself, the members of parliament who pass this money, their jobs depend on the patronage or the support of the ordinary voter. They are the ones who have to interface with the voter every 5 years. If the voter is unhappy with them, they are the ones who lose their jobs, not me and you. So because they are the ones closest to that voter, I think that the actions are more likely to reflect the interests, beliefs, and the moral convictions of the voter than me and you. Why do they vote for cars? Because remember, we are in a very bad situation. We have COVID restrictions where many people are at home and they can't move. But who are these people who are at home and can't move? Because for most Ugandans, 70% who live in rural areas, they depend on their garden for food. They don't depend on the market. So the people who depend on the market may be the ones who are suffering the consequences of these restrictions, and those may constitute maybe 10% of the population. Because I'm sure that 10% of the people in these urban areas are middle income and high income people who can still survive. But the most Ugandans in rural areas are not affected because they don't depend on the market for food, they depend on their gardens for food. So So it is possible that these MPs are able to read the public mood better than me and you. Remember, I'm speculating because I don't have any scientific data. They're able to read the public mood better than me and you, and I am inclined to trust their judgment than the judgment of any journalist, political pundit seated in an air-conditioned office or studio like this and making an argument. You see my granddaughter there? She's a member of parliament. Her job depends on the next 5 years she has to go and seek approval. So let me criticize my own argument in order to conclude what I'm saying. What we have noticed in Uganda is that we have a high anti-incumbency bias. That in every election, about 2/3 of members of parliament are not returning. In the last election, we had about 465 members of parliament, only 107 were re-elected. Did you know that?
Yes, I know.
So, which shows that the Ugandan public also makes a judgment on their performance, and in every 5 years, in this case, almost about 80%, were told that you did not perform very well, according to our understanding. So, if these members of parliament behave like this, perhaps because they already know that the ordinary voter is so hostile to incumbency that it doesn't matter to them. They can go against the moral and ethical foundations of the voter because they don't trust that the voter will reward them anyway. They may not buy the car, still they will not be voted.
Okay. I want to bring the economist at the tail end of this round because I want him to have a better, a larger view of our thoughts. So I will bring in Sarah first, who is joining us through Zoom. Sarah, are you online? Hello, Sarah.
Yes, Charles, I'm here.
Good. Sarah, you have heard what Andrew and the other colleagues here say. But picking it from what where Andrew just left it, that the views of us seated in air-conditioned offices and workstations, including, though he did not add it, but I thought including civil society, you know, actors like you, criticizing MPs at this point for the bad timing is not fair to the MPs, that the parliament had already budgeted this. This is an entitlement, and their thinking should be, their choice should be respected. What's your take? Sarah? I think I've lost Sarah for now. Let me come back to Dr. Muhumuza. Your bird's eye view of the discussion that is going on so far.
Yeah, thank you, Charles, and the panelists. It's actually a question of a bird's eye view, because a bird must stand up there and take a broader look. And I see a lot of issues that need to come into discussion. Chris Obore clearly put it, where is the clarity? Even as we say 200 million for MPs' cars, was it even about cars? If it was about cars, why did ex-officials receive the money? Because a number of these ex-officials already have official cars that bring them in. But even when you hear the accountability that comes with it, you do not have even to bring a receipt to show that I bought a car worth this much. And some MPs have already said, I'm not going to buy the car, but I'm not also going to bring back the money. Others have said, I'm going to buy an ambulance for my constituency. So you clearly see that I think there is a need for clarity. What is this money about? We may not want to tie it to cars, and I think we need to clear that at policy level. I know there is what usually sometimes is called a settlement allowance. When a person is appointed into an office, which office comes with extra costs that they possibly didn't have, then you give them a settlement allowance, and they can begin rent into a house. Our colleague here, you don't have to assume that they were already in Kampala. Some of them are just coming into Kampala, so they will need money to rent a decent house. And after burning their resources in elections, maybe we now need to rebrand that, because the way it was given and the way it is required to be accounted for does not seem to speak to cars. But maybe cars is what it was thought earlier, but it has transitioned into many other things. So you need to be looking at that. Should it have been deferred? Maybe yes, maybe no. It's neither here nor there. But I remember last year we began a conversation with government, really, the Minister of Finance to be specific, after COVID came in. Because the Minister of Finance had not even adjusted the budget after COVID came in.
Yeah.
And we said, you people, you cannot just ignore this reality that a lockdown changes everything. And that requires you to also revisit your budget. They had even still left money, and they were releasing money for travel abroad, even when there were lockdowns, the world over, not just Uganda. They were still releasing money for internal travel, even when there was a lockdown that people couldn't go. So he said, let's reflect some of these. Now, similar as we have seen that come out in this particular budget, as Chris Obore have said, a lot of cuts. We are affecting things that even if you cannot say we sacrificed and were cut, there are things you just couldn't do already out of the COVID restriction measures. Now, maybe we could even have gone further and say, what else should the budget adjust, so that we are not just focusing in on Parliament and only on the vehicles. Are there other things that government needs to defer in light of this? I was just reading yesterday how Malaysia completely decided, Malaysia and Singapore were planning to build kind of a speed train between their capitals. Now, that train was supposed to be reducing the speed from 6 hours, the time, to 90 minutes. But because of COVID, the $17 billion investment of a speed bullet train has been cut. Now, we need also to go back and beyond this 100 billion and say, what else do we need to defer? What else do we need to completely cancel out of our budget in reflection of this? So the conversation really should go beyond this particular view to say, how should we adjust our budget in light of the lockdowns? And lockdowns are reducing revenues, they are reducing business opportunities, but they are increasing costs both on individuals and also on hospitals. But also, even as I've had conversations of saying, well, the money should have been given to the Minister of Health. We already have questions on how the Minister of Health handles money that it receives in implementation of the COVID issues. So the cost benefit also does not justify where it should go and where it shouldn't be. So I think for me, it's like you go to a doctor and you say, I have a temperature. The doctor does not just aim on the temperature. It can be a bacterial infection, it could be a malaria infection, it could be anything. He does a thorough diagnosis of very many things about you. Your stool, your urine, your blood, your all sorts of things. And eventually he might even hold you and say, man, you're not even going back home. What I've discovered is massive. Boils. So as we said in the financial crisis of 2008, let's not lose an opportunity of this crisis to open up bigger things. Because even the other technical people in the government, as they have been mentioned, for them they are buying new cars. Shouldn't we say no batches of cars this year across all those, unless a case is clearly made? Maybe some of the members of Parliament could have said, fine, for me you can defer, because others really need the cars. But there may be others who may say, I can wait, because after all, as we've said, it's an entitlement. And it runs for the next 5 years. Some can say, fine, you give me mine next year, give me mine the other year. I still have a car that can serve. So we lost an opportunity for a conversation, but I think we shouldn't lose that opportunity to further the conversation and broaden it to address what are the COVID effects on the economy and how do we address them.
Chris has raised his hand. Let you come in, and then I will bring in Abel with another question.
I would like to agree with the submissions of both Doctor and our grandfather, Andrew. But I also want to put some additional explanation on how we debate public affairs as a country.
Yeah.
One, the issue of members of parliament, really, like I submitted before, it's about us failing to do a diagnosis. And therefore, the elites and the academia and the civil society find it easy. Because this payment, when you come into comparative needs, it's about how much do I earn where I work? And you see, an MP is getting 200 million. No, that's a lot of money.
The frustration.
Yes, it's cooperative needs analysis. You're paying this 200 million in a situation maybe wages somewhere are very low. So somebody has not conceptualized the duties of a member of parliament, and then he says they are getting a lot of money. So there is that also, that aspect as well. But until majority of them, even the last parliament, what they were before they came to parliament, along the way they said, what did they come to do here? You mean it's like this? That is a testimony, and that is it. Because once the journalists speak the 200 million, they signal out there to an economy where not many are earning 5 million. Really, people deserve to be angry that these guys are taking a lot of money. But they have never understood the burdens that come with the 200 million. So we need to understand that the nature of public policy issues, in most cases they are fuzzy and very difficult to define. Each one defines it the way they perceive it. So that itself is a dilemma to the policymakers for a country. So we need to be fair when we're analyzing them. The second aspect is public policy is about trade-offs. And I'm sure you agree with me. So if it is about trade-offs, those who are making decisions want them to make, how much information do they have? And how many need this? Because it's about competing interests. We are saying that the budget should have gone this way. There's somebody making a justification for budget to go to the media. Because they will tell you without the media, there's no democracy. There's another one who's saying if you don't put money into agriculture now, we're going to die of hunger. Genuine. As of now, as we speak, the biggest danger actually is the people in the countryside are crying over unreliable weather for their crops. They have lost crops. There's going to be a problem. Now, but the person in town is seeing something different. So that is why policy making is a cyclic process. Yeah. It is a back and forth, an iterative process. If we appreciate like that, then we are able to create clarity we're talking about. The other aspect of Odongotho is in public policy management, you have to create a problem to solve a problem. There can never be an end to problems of public nature. If we all agree that, then we are able to try to estimate the degree of the problems we have. Unfortunately, most of the commentaries assume, okay, President Museveni is the president, so-and-so is the Minister of Finance, they must provide this. And I'm sure as an economist he knows, before you ask, you must earn. I don't know where that kitty is, where you just speak. The other day I was watching traders saying compensators. You are talking about fighting COVID, but the traders are saying compensators. Some are saying let landlords not charge us rent. A landlord is saying URA is following me. Those in agriculture are saying, please, we need government to build the silos. The demands to government are legitimate. But about the kitty of government, I know there are leakages. Before we address the leakages, do we have the conscience that there must be a kitty from which all demand? So what I'm saying now, if we begin to clarify that issues that way, we create a public that is conscious, and we begin to make informed criticism. Where Parliament has fallen short, it is clear it has fallen short. For instance, when a doctor says that give some, leave some, again in the policy, discrimination is not nice. You cannot say this or that. If it is to give, you give all. Otherwise, the policy becomes discriminative. The other legitimate thing is raising is why give ex officios? It again takes me to the legalistic argument when I was talking about, but it applies as well in the explanation.
Actually, most people have been saying ex officio, but even ministers that already they already have
exactly
the cars.
Exactly. I have got that argument. Even me, I would feel morally, because the moral policies are the easiest to advocate. Sometimes they don't need the reason. You just say it is very wrong for Mwenda to wear a tie. Why does Mwenda wear a suit when all people in this village don't have shoes? It's a moral argument. Mwenda is smart, you know, he takes coffee.
We should ask ourselves, whose morality?
Exactly. So it is easier to deliver
There are
moral.
those which are general.
It is easier to deliver moral politics.
It's not true, by the way, that we have one morality. I think that in a country like Uganda, we have two moralities. As I have said, you have the morality of me, Chris here, my grandson Fred, our MP, and you, and the morality of people in the village. Let me ask, do people in rural areas think this was a bad decision? In any case, what do people in rural areas, ordinary Ugandans, think about the privileges and the entitlements of the MP?
Do they know them anyway?
Because they voted for them. I think
They
that
not even
if
know.
you are, let me give you an example. We used to have a minister in Toro there in the late 80s.
Can you just fast hold a bit?
So
let me interrupt you because I want to announce to the viewer out there, if you want to join the discussion, the WhatsApp number to send a message through 0709 602 592. I will repeat it, 0709 602 592. That is the number that you should send us a message through so that we can interact with you and read your messages. Yes, Andrew.
So I was saying we used to have a minister in the late 80s. Immediately Museveni came into government, one of the ministers he appointed from Toro was a man called Tom Rubali. Tom didn't have anything. But people in Fort Portfolio complained, how can you have been a minister for so long? And you are such a poor person. They couldn't understand that a minister is a big man. You must be able to have access to resources, build yourself a decent and large home, a mansion maybe, drive a big car, and display your wealth by expending generosity to your community. So I am inclined to believe, by the way, that contrary to what we think, the ordinary voter may not distinguish between the private finances of a public official and the public finances of the state of Uganda. Let me ask you this. Assuming a senior politician in this country, he can even be government or opposition, falls dangerously sick, and President Museveni gives him his private jet and evacuates him to India or South Africa or even Britain for treatment. What does Kiamlesiri in Kanyandahi village, or Kelo in Pongdong village, or Mukasa in Masaka think? Would they think Museveni has acted incorrectly? Because I'm inclined to believe they say, omusajja angalina ekisa, omusajja nembabazi in Rutoro, or whatever they would say naturally, that this man is a kind man. What do our people think about a president, and how should that president behave? How do they see him to have acted correctly and ethically? Do you think another person in the village makes a distinction between the private finances of Museveni and the public finances of the state of Uganda? A leader is supposed to be generous, he's supposed to provide. In fact, in my language and the language of my grandson Fred, a king, in the culture of Batora and Banyoro, even Banyankole, Omugabe, what is Kugaba used to give? Even when we say Omugabe in Ankole, a king is a person who gives. Omukama, Ainura Abantu, meaning he gives people. So I think that our countries and our populations face that serious contradiction between the moral foundations of the state that was constructed through colonial conquest, the modern state, and the moral foundations of our people and what they expect of their leaders. And we elites who sit on the televisions, who speak on Facebook and tweet and appear in the my great-grandson Sarah Birete,
Granddaughter.
No, she's my great-granddaughter rather. My great-granddaughter. All these things we argue, really, how consistent are they with the people? Because the first article of the Uganda's constitution says the people are supreme. If the people are supreme, we must ask, these people who are supreme, are they univocal? And what do the vast majority of them think about the behavior of public officials? Because if you ask me, I am disinclined, I'm inclined not to believe Fred Muhumuza's views. I'm inclined to believe an MP's views, because the MP has a direct interaction with the voters, and in their strategic calculations they must act in a manner that endears them to voters. You see, so So our governments, our countries face a serious contradiction that you have an inherited moral and ethical code of the state from colonial conquest, but you have an existing moral and ethical code of the ordinary population and what they actually think. And, this contradiction is always facing us, and to resolve it will take time, because remember, by the way, the dialectic is like this. Uganda is not a country that is stagnant. We are in a continuous change. The number of people who are educated, who are exposed, who are middle class, every day is growing. If you look at the poverty statistics, and Freedom Humuza would support me on this, is the middle class has been growing in Uganda. I can go back to my phone and show you. It says it now maybe constitutes about 30%. So as that class grows, the moral and ethical foundations of the state of Uganda and its politics are also changing. Okay. But also we still have a large traditional society which believes in, which has a particular and a different moral code and ethical code. And what we are discussing right now is that conflict.
Okay, so good. Chris, just 1 minute so that then I
raised a pertinent issue, a question that I need to explain. The issue of the ex-officials.
Yeah, and ministers.
The ministers.
Why should they be given extra cars in the 200 million again, when they already have?
Again, morally, it's a legitimate argument. Because when you assume a minister will go to where he's appointed, is given a car actually, with the driver, with everything, but again in the parliament he gets the money. That's the argument. Which moral is why? If it's about cars, you're saying why?
What is the difference? I'm beginning to question. What is the difference between what you two are referring to as the moral argument with the realistic argument?
When we talk about morality, it's about opinion. It's about a personal opinion. It's about your cultural thinking. That's why he's telling you, you as an Alur may not have the same morality with me from Teso. So if we think about morality, whose morality? That's the question he asked. And it's a genuine thing. It's a difficult kind of politics to pursue.
That's why I'm asking.
Because it's sentimental.
I think now, those are different.
Yeah, what I'm saying now, Doctor raises that issue. It is in the open. I've been getting that feedback. But the question I would like you to help me, Doctor, would be, you see, in Uganda, we run a hybrid system of democracy. We are neither a presidential system, nor are we a parliamentary system. In fact, all members of the executive, except the president, are members of parliament. All of them. Some elected, others ex-officials. They are sworn in. Yeah. There is no ex-official who is not sworn in. He has to take the oath and the parliamentary oath to become a member of parliament. The difference being they do not vote, but they do parliament business. You get the arrangement. So in such a hybrid system, and parliament exists to facilitate members of parliament. This ex-official has become a member of parliament. And it is our duty as parliament to facilitate them. Now the question would be, if there are those moral and maybe some legitimate arguments, what would be the basis for parliament not to facilitate one member and leave the other? In a policy term, that would be discriminative. So we're not going to apply a discriminatory approach unless given an instrument, a precise instrument that do not pay this if this happens. For now, the parliamentary commission is, as per the Parliamentary Act, is to take care of the well-being of members of parliament and the staff of parliament, and that's how we budget, and the executive gives us the money.
Thank you very much. And I think that is going to take us, after Aber, I'm going to take us into the budgeting aspect. What do we budget for and how do we budget? Do we budget to create gaps and, as they call it, pilferage, or do we budget to tackle, you know, the real issues? And I will want Doctor to come in at that point, because, and I had feared, I hesitated to bring in my views, because the question I was asking is, the realistic observation or the fact is that any ex-official, and that is coming from the explanation, which I agree with. Your explanation is MPs have to be given money because they have to go to the constituency and monitor government programs and all that. Does an ex officio go there? Then 2, a minister is already given a car to do that and do more. So isn't it an addition, which then may make someone reasonably to again act and make a rejoinder that actually perhaps the money is not necessarily for going to the constituency, it is one of those additional perks. That's for me what I am arguing, and the doctor will bring us to the point. But Aber, Lillian, as an MP, Chris and I think Mwenda earlier raised the issue of they raised the issue of the contradictions and of course the difficulties that you MPs face, which we recognize and we really sympathize with you when you are supposed to divide even the 200, take back some for taxes, then the people are now waiting at home also, the constituents. Do you think that there should be a change in this policy over cars? Because every 5 years it comes up. And Chris, the other time we were still discussing it, it came up again. This year again, or this term, it has come up again. Do you think that time has come that you can make a policy and say, 1, this money, buy us cars, or stop it, like you stopped Constituency Development Fund, which one was stopped and cut and scrapped and something like that because of this kind of complaints.
And now the MPC demands from the constituency.
They want to bring it back.
CDF.
Yes. Kenya has kept theirs, though they have just increased it.
Yes.
Yes. So what do you think in terms of the policy?
Charles, you see, the policy which is current, first of all, presses the MPs a lot. For me, as a member of parliament, if I am to give my opinion and choose which option would work for me, giving me 200 million versus buying for me a brand new car of around 600 million, I would go the brand new car of 600 million. Because, anyway, we all know that there is a certain mileage that if a government car is driven up to a certain mileage, I think around 20,000, you are supposed to, dispose it. And I can assure you that mileage will be hit within 2.5 years by members of parliament. Therefore, if you are to go by procuring a car, then government has to plan for over and above what they are giving the members of parliament now, and procure, first of all, a certain standard of a car, based on the road networks, based on the distance, and that will definitely be something more expensive, but it will work for a member of parliament. As I noted to you earlier, is that the money that we are talking about, which is being flushed out there, 200 million, it's a whole lump sum money. Just like if you say Mr. Charles is being paid probably 16 million, that's just an example. I'm not sure about your salary. Just a disclaimer. But it's just maybe probably gross. When they cut it off, the net will come to a lower amount of money. The same thing I talked about, the issue of the taxes. You talk about 200 million, but when you go to buy a car, you will be forced to buy a second-hand car, used, which you will pay. If it's a moderately a good car, it will be around maybe 80 million or 90, then the tax will chop around 100+ million. So for me, as a member of parliament, if we decide and pass a policy and say we're going to buy you cars and give it all of you, we no longer want to give you money, I'm okay with it. There is no problem with that. After all, this issue of a car, every time people are discussing, there's blackmail on the politicians. You don't know the phone calls. Someone calls you and says, hello, Honorable, can you share with me something on the car money? So you're like, it's meant for a car. So what do I share with you on the car? And then the issue of morality, Charles, there is nothing immoral at all about the issue of the car. I think I have to put this very clear. We must move. We must come to Kampala, go back to Kitgum, and come and mean business. if you're going to give us a bus and say we start dropping someone from maybe Karuma, we drop the first legislator, then we reach Lango, we drop, then we go to West Nile, by the time we reach Kitgum, if that is what works. So I mean, I think we need to shape the discussion the right way. I have issues sometimes with the elites. We sit and bring in criticisms, but we don't look at both sides of the story. And these cars, by the way, you can't even use for 5 years. You will drive these cars, 3 years down the road, the cars are broken. My brother here, he said I should call him the big old man of the clan, my grandfather. I don't know which clan.
The African clan.
I don't know which clan I'm supposed to look at. But I just need to talk about the issue of the campaigns. You see, the period of a campaign is a very short period. We can't even borrow a car. There are even people who will just offer you a car and say, oh, you can drive because we believe in you, you'll be a good leader. I can give you my pickup. But you can't say, okay, since you borrowed me a car during campaigns, let me now use it the entire time you're in Parliament. Parliament is 5 years. Campaign time can be around 2-3 years, 2-3 months, and you are done with the election. So we cannot argue and say, probably there are MPs who may require the cars, there are those who don't require a car. We just have to look at what is an entitlement of a PS in this ministry. A car, probably, and maybe fuel. And you know these cars, you don't even budget for the fuel. You don't budget for the cost of a driver. I have to pay the driver from my money. I think really the MPs are being very understanding. Charles, you need to be our advocate here, and I think my fellow panelists, you must really give credit to MPs that these people are really being Ugandans. Alongside all the increasing demands that you go through, you must buy an ambulance, you must send money for burials, you must send money for school fees, you must go and support in the hospital, all these things.
You must buy coffins.
You must buy coffins.
Pay fees.
And then when we are doing all these things of buying coffins, buying
funeral expenses, wedding expenses.
Then when they give us a car, boom, oh, that money is too much.
That's fine.
I think this is a time that the media also doesn't need to join in framing, making the MPs be on a defensive mechanism every time. I don't think the car that the PS's drive might even be more than what we are going to buy. So I think the issue of the car, let's all agree. If we put in the floor of Parliament or we raise it as an issue, we need to discuss and agree, we can take cars which are provided by government and we are comfortable with it.
Okay, someone called one of our colleagues, Sarah. Sarah has sent a message that the technical team tells me the line is not very clear. So she said, Charles, these are my views. It is important to facilitate MPs to enable them execute their mandate of promoting constitutional governance and oversight functions against by the executive, but as a country, we must cut our coat according to our cloth. Facilitating MPs must come with a balance of priorities of the people they seek to serve. So the questions that I ask in this debate, that this debate must address are, 1, what are our top priorities as a country today? 2, how should they be addressed? 3, what are the best options for facilitating MPs when it comes to transportation, COVID or no COVID? And then she says, she has examples. She says Sri Lanka gives MPs duty-free option on purchase of vehicles, whereas Ghana gives them a car loan payable during the parliamentary tenure. With our resource envelope and the challenges of increasing public debt, COVID pandemic and biggest size of parliament, how best should we facilitate MPs to do their work? We should give them soft loans, payable in 5 years through automatic salary deductions. And then she says, finally, Ministers, they are already facilitated. As for ministers, they are already facilitated by the same resource envelope with an official vehicle and a pickup for home use. This is not sustainable because it is double facilitation by the taxpayer. Now, as we go for a break, Andrew and Chris, someone called George Arali says, please, I request Chris to promise that he will periodically publish the movement maps of MPs now that the vehicles will be trackable and, you know, with the vehicle type 2. 2, to Mwenda, please, Andrew, persuade yourself that you cannot speak for the rural people. You are very different from them. And also do not underestimate their intellect or moral standards. Sorry. There are over 400 messages that have come already. But let's take a short break. When we come back, let's now feel free to interject, respectfully, of course. 1 minute, 2 minutes, so that we can escalate the discussion. But let's take that break now.
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Century Points when you deposit, send, and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go, MTN.
Echa COVID-19 chijja kugwa only if we stay at home, observe physical distancing, wear masks properly, sanitize or wash our hands with soap and water regularly, or get vaccinated now.
Guess what happened yesterday? I entered the what? The taxi. But the pregnancy is from the what? The generator. Then my phone does toot-toot. And the toothbrush breaks in the what? In the porridge. Then I call who?
Wait, what?
First wait. I am still telling you. Then the jerrycan does what?
Love to talk? MTN My Paka Paka now has more minutes. Get My Paka Paka voice bundles to talk and talk at no extra charge. Dial *160*1# to activate My Paka Paka.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Welcome back from the break, and I want to welcome you back to Behind the Headlines this Wednesday, the 28th of July, 2021. A reminder from the Prime Minister's office that the President will address, the presidential address on COVID will be on Friday at 8 p.m. So pay attention to that, and not on Saturday as had earlier been communicated. And that's information coming in from the Prime Minister. We are having a discussion on the cars given to MPs. Is it the right timing? Is it correct? What's the issue? Is it an issue of budgeting? What are our priorities? The MPs and Parliament is saying that this is an entitlement put in the budget. The budget was prepared earlier, and they have also foregone other budgeted items. So this is what Parliament picked as important to their work. What is your thought? send your message to 0709 602 592. We shall sample some of them. I know there are already many. I want to bring in Dr. Muhumuza here. But in the studio we have Andrew Mwenda, a veteran journalist, calls himself old man of the clan. We have the African clan, he says it is. Chris Obore, Director Parliament of Uganda, and he speaks for Parliament. He's in charge of communication. We have Honorable Lilian Aber, who is General Secretary of the NRM caucus in Parliament, and she is MP for Kitgum Women. I have messages sampled from Twitter. Dennis Turiahebwa, he says, Charles, to Honorable Lilian Aber, that we know that MPs need cars. I personally think 200 million is little for a good car. But what is her say about ministers and ex-officials who have official cars but still receive the 200 million shillings? This is what makes us question the intention of this arrangement. Cedric Babu Ndilima says, the issue is not the entitlement of 200 million for MPs. I suppose it's the timing. The COVID pandemic is unprecedented. More importantly, government shouldn't buy cars outright, but rather lease them. It's more cost effective, reduces wastage, and manages cash flow. Analyst Emma says, good evening, Charles. I'm not against the MPs being given cars. However, I propose that MPs should be given cars, not money, in the way of promoting Bubu. Kira Motors. That you have to buy Kira Motors.
Those are all the policy options.
And that Kira Motors can build for our MPs very nice cars. Thank you. James Bernard says, we are okay with MPs, with Parliament allocation for the 200 million shillings rather. The issue is the priority. Kamagara Maridadi says, I thought that Parliament of Uganda is for rich people who go to serve poor Ugandans. Why again drain them at such a hard time? Before I bring in you panel again, panelists, starting with Dr. Muhumuza, I want to remind, we were talking about the priority, the timing, that one of those contexts that really angered a number of commentators out there, the time that the giving out of the money came out, it coincided with a time when the Prime Minister actually was on public television calling on Ugandans to contribute money towards, any amount of money, towards the COVID fight. And from the comments I followed, that even enraged some of the people out there in the public more. That if you know that we don't have money, why do you then take this and use it at this time and not to postpone or something like that? Doctor, please start us on living from where we left it, the issue of the budgeting. How do we do it? What should we go for? Parliament is they call it self-accounting, is a self-accounting. It is an arm of government. Yeah. So in order for it to run smoothly without interference from other arms, it should do its own budget, independent of the other arms, especially the executive that owns the money. So to what extent must we even control it? It is saying, like Chris says, we have done our cuts. We have respected that. But we think the 200 million is important for our work.
Yeah, thank you so much. As I said, we should not lose the focus and debate the symptom. This is a policy issue. So Parliamentary Commission was implementing a policy. And I think what is coming out clearly is there are fundamental flaws in this policy of government's fleet of vehicles, not just for MPs. Chris says it would have been discriminatory. It's not even discriminatory. You actually, because now it is discriminatory, that she gets a car which at the end of 5 years will be worn out. A minister gets exactly the same similar car, but because the minister is going to be using a government vehicle, his or hers will not be worn out. At the end of 5 years, could still be parked in their compound. That's if they even bought it. Because as I said earlier, this is not even 200 million for cars. It's not very clear that anybody must buy a car and account back. It's money to give to them, but which was labeled as cars. So there is a policy issue there. And policies cannot be discriminatory. You have to arrange the policy to address the differences within the people. We facilitate people to travel abroad. But it is very clear, ministers will go business class, officials accompanying them, unless you are at a level possible of a director, you are going to go economy. Even your allowances, the facilitation, is going to be different. So this policy could have come in clearly to say, if you are already provided with a government vehicle, this would not apply. You're not discriminating, you're actually equalizing for all of them as actors. But I'm even looking at a bigger picture, because for me this is a policy of government vehicles. The 200 million is even actually cheaper than if I look at what we are going to spend on Chris or Bore over this 5-year period. It includes maintenance, it includes fuel, it includes a driver. Chris Obore's vehicle as director might actually be 400 million. And when it goes into these garages, maintenance and driver and fuel and etc., over these 5 years, we might spend on him $1 billion, which is the cost. So you need to address all these issues.
Doctor, we calculated for a level of a PS. For 5 years, a PS spends $2 billion on a car.
So why don't we
and
do
also,
the same
doctor,
thing with
a junior officer in government at a level of principal, they drive government cars.
Yes.
They are more expensive than a member of parliament.
And theirs are maintained
by government.
Both fuel and repair and the driver and so many other things. So we can actually adopt this model to say every government official, give them the 200 million, take care of that car yourself. All we want is you to turn up at your duty station and work. So there is a policy issue that you want to address. And as I said, let's not lose an opportunity of this crisis. The old man talks about voters. Most of these MPs now don't even look at voters anymore. They know when you are 70% are voters. It is during those 3 months. After that, you will go back then. Little wonder many of them are turned out and they never come back because they never remember the voters. But also many others are turned out not because they didn't work or worked. The dynamics, as you said, are changing. At one point you are there, you are 42 years. Young people come and the young person is appearing and they just move you out. A party comes. You are swept out. Whether you work, so the dynamics that change the MPs are complicated. But for me on this particular issue, we have an opportunity to review the entire policy of government vehicles across the board.
But Fred, I want to ask you, the government right now gives members of parliament a certain allowance for them to be able to travel to their constituencies.
Part of it is for fuel.
That's for fuel.
But that's what I'm saying. So, and maintenance of the car, of course. It's just fuel.
It's fuel.
Yes, but how much is it a month? Because we need to calculate that also.
Now, those are the things you want to
calculate. It is determinant
by
the distance.
Yeah, the kilometers
from.
So, if we have calculated, because you say the parliament maintenance of the car and all this may be 2 billion, you may find the same price to the member of parliament because he gets the fuel.
Honorable Insereko, Honorable Joel Senyonyi, Honorable, they get less. The fellow who comes from Kabong gets more mileage than the one who comes from Masaka.
But we need to know how much does Insereko get because he's the one who is in the Kampala Central.
It is computed in, and then there is a level of car and how much it consumes per kilometer.
Maybe, Andrew, if you want to ask a better question, and then you will apply it to each MP, knowing their mileage, you can ask how much is given for each mile, because I know that they calculate tarmac different from
Maram.
To Maram. So if you come from, say, like Zombo, you will calculate up to, say, Nebi, from here up to Nebi, from the post office up to Nebi on tarmac. Then if you come from the farthest part of Zombo, from Nebi, then you will start calculating now.
A higher rate on the Maram.
Yes.
But now you see that.
So it is important to know how much it is if we have to ask that question.
That for me is logical, just as you come in. That for me is logical. as opposed to technical people who are given a lump sum per month. They are simply given 2 million.
Precisely. And
whether the man is just rotating around one day and come watch 2 million. An MP, you can understand that they don't get it when they are in Kampala. It is only for the period they are expected to travel, and it's computed on a logical basis of the kilometers.
Okay.
So the technical officials is where I even have a bigger problem
That's why, Doctor,
than the 200 million.
Doctor, there are some things we don't say here because you incite members of parliament. Even the mileage, these people are crying that they are given a mileage less than the fuel price, the pump price.
Because it moves up with the dollar.
It moves up, but they remain what? Constant. Those are issues we have been grappling with. That members, you know, you are leaders. Already people are saying this. Please accept that. But if they came out to say, okay, like most of them are generating consensus now, that don't attack us over vehicles. Government simply buy for us vehicles.
Yes.
And government is knowledgeable to know that, you see, by giving 200, government has made a saving on members of parliament.
It has.
Because if you go and say, give them a red number plate, I can assure you, Uganda will enter, you will now begin thinking parliament is just
because the red number plate must come with a driver.
With a driver,
if you look
and there are regulations governing red number plates.
Exactly.
So if a member of parliament takes this red number plate to a beam, he must go to his constituency. By the time it comes in 3 months, they are saying take it to the garage. The repair cost will go up.
And then the garage will charge you an arm and the leg on that car.
I think President Museveni has been frugal enough to convince the members of parliament, especially his party members, to go with the grant. You are asking about a receipt whether they buy a car. Already these people are not enjoying the privilege they would enjoy by virtue of their national protocol. You are giving them a grant. You are asking them a receipt. What if they say no? Bring here a 4-wheel drive. Bring your driver. And every MP, by the way, would love to get one of their constituents be paid by government as a driver. That is another cost. So when we talk about top priorities like Sarah was raising, Charles, let us raise the bar of public debate as intellectuals to a level where actually contribute knowledge. I am a policy analyst, in addition to being a journalist. And I know for a fact, Dr. Musa knows, policy is an iterative process. It is a back and forth. Your top priority now creates another top priority tomorrow. So there is no end to top priorities in policy making. But you find people coming to the television, top priority. What's our priority today? Yes, COVID is a top priority. Are you going to say the police must not get fuel because there is COVID? You need police even when there is COVID. Now education sector is saying we need schools, but there is COVID. There's already a clash between the health and education. The traders are saying this. Please, it is easier to be an analyst, but statecraft is another skill. We should also respect those who are running a state, even when we are giving them feedback. But we tend to look at them as ill-informed, uneducated. Therefore, the best are those who appear on TV. The best are those who talk with this. That's what I disagree with. Let us engage. Mwenda, by the way, whatever you say about this old man here, he has always emphasized on intellectual arguments. Mwenda will go and analyze an issue and take that position. But most of us really, we simply want media spaces to be heard. It is not the voice, it is the reason. Let the voice be accompanied by reason. So if public policy world over is that fluid, can't we develop a consensus on how to really say this and this? For instance, like you saying you want the biggest piece of meat. You don't even know how many clothes were cooked. And you're abusing the woman in the kitchen. You don't know, you're not participating in the securing of the meat to be served. But you want to take the biggest one, the biggest part of the meat. That's wrong. You must be in the process to know the person in the kitchen is actually preparing what is enough. And where does the person get what is enough? It's supposed to be from us who are waiting to receive it. So the challenges exist. An economist is here. I'm not an expert there. I'm a pure policy analyst.
I think the point is raising. Policy analysis is not guided by emotions.
Completely.
There must be logic and reasoning. Anchored on, let's first agree what result do we want to achieve. If the result is to facilitate members of parliament to come and do whatever they want to do, So how best do you deliver that? And those are the questions Sarah was raising. Now, quite often we have no logic. And as I said about the 200, I don't think it is even for them to buy which car. Because some of them have already said, I'm not going to buy a car. And they will not be
facilitation.
They will not even legally be wrong. Because they are not.
Some of them, actually, let me interject there. Some of them are pulling money from their private things to add to buy a car which is reasonable. So already that tells you the money is not.
Others have already said we are going to deduct and contribute to our party.
Absolutely. Others have chosen to buy ambulances.
So you can see that there is a lot of unclarity. But let's not lose the focus of a member of parliament coming in needs a startup fund. They can put it to the car, and as they have shown us, they can put it to any other priority of theirs. But it's a blank check more or less. So you would even untag off the label of cars and say this is a startup for your business as a member of parliament. Buy a suit, because now, like I remember Merkel, the president or the chancellor for Germany, said when I come for these conferences, these men can repeat the same suit for the whole duration of 5 days. They only change the shirt. But me as a woman, the shoe, the handbag, the earring, I must change all of them. So here is a member of parliament coming in. She has to change her entire wardrobe because she's going to be appearing, and journalists will be there to say, by the way, that shoe, she repeated it.
Okay.
Give her startup capital, and let's call it that, and close the chapter.
And okay, we are entering towards the 30 minutes left. We need to start thinking of how best can this kind of contradictions be handled. And but there are some questions. I want to just pick a few questions so that we can use it to, we use some of them to inform our way forward thoughts. Someone called Stephen Chigonya from Mubende says, focus should be geared towards proper accountability and reduction on luxurious expenditures. Mr. Obore is talking about discrimination, yet already the relief fund was discriminative.
What?
The relief fund. That the relief fund was discriminative.
In social analysis,
I think it is not talking. That that not respond to that.
I'm just saying in social analysis that's called residual.
Then he says the timing for the cars was wrong, but 200 is, imagine 200 is a myth to many local Ugandans living in absolute poverty and almost committing suicide. I don't know whether that is backed by any evidence, this person, what is your name? This person has not put his or her name. Oh, Nixon Munanura. Nixon Nixon is living in the past a bit, because Nixon is saying, for me, I'm asking Gobi.
No, he can ask, we shall refer the question.
Let him ask.
Yes. You know Gobi's address the question.
Gobi, I know you are listening and watching. There is someone who is still asking you question, and I will send to you those questions myself, because you are not here, so I wouldn't want to waste time. Yes, the technical team has helped me. Someone called Opolot Sam. My concern is army MPs, do they honestly need the cars? Most of them are generals who already have vehicles that lead cars. Those are the things we are talking about, yes, really. The public pulse. Lazarus from Mukono says, Charles, thanks for the show and having the brilliant minds or panelists. Our concern as the public is that we are scared of too much wastage on government expenditure, taking into account that we have a small economy. That's important. The size of the economy context must be brought in as well. Money for MPs is just a symptom. Thanks, Lazarus, about that. Mr. Iga from Barara says, thank you, Charles, for the wonderful show. What type of car must an MP buy? Who pays for their fuel? Obore and Lillian have already told you. Some are topping up. David from Bulgaria says, members of parliament are entitled to that amount, but it was just common sense that they hold on since almost everything has come to a standstill because of COVID. Otherwise, 200 million by law, they are entitled to. That spelling you need to check, David. Godfrey from Entebbe says, Charles, your show glues my upper lid to remain sleepless to the end. Thanks, Godfrey, for the appreciation. I think the MPs are not to blame for the government's poor mechanism of prioritizing on budget allocations. The common man will only benefit when the government learns how to prioritize budget allocations. Thanks, Godfrey. Joshua Mubunga from Kasese says, good leadership is all about sacrifice during times of crisis. It's not time to buy cars when we need COVID-19 vaccine. I don't see patriotism in this parliament. That's the view of Joshua. Maybe give me 3 more. Okay, this is the last one we are reading. You will understand us. Basheja in Mutungo Nakawa. Assuming the ex-official, it's not ex-official, it is ex-official, is dropped in a reshuffle, how do we recover the money? That's an interesting question, by the way. MPs are okay to get, I think we can add there, elected MPs are okay to get cars. Why shouldn't we talk about RDCs and so on? That's from Basheja in Mutungo. You see the questions, they are reasonable. They are interesting as well, and these people are reasoning actually logically, and for me, yes, we can have some of those dynamics, you know, torn apart here and there, but largely Ugandans, I think, are informed, and that's what we should always know. So Chris, start us off on what should be the best way to handle this in terms of budgeting, going forward, I mean, budgeting, policy making, so that we come to an understanding or a consensus, minimum at that.
One, I will start from the policy. Policy is politics.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. And the biggest challenge you have as a country, we have chosen to pursue antagonistic politics, not principled divergence on philosophy, on ideals. It's just antagonistic. And therefore, we have not generated a national consensus on how even if we are disagree on the economic policy, it should be just economic policy. We see we are transporting, I don't know how to call it without sounding offensive, we are transporting our bad cultural manners, even when we have gone to school, to the political arena, and is denying the political actors to have mechanisms to be able to agree and talk. And therefore, one group sees those managing the state as totally useless, which should not be encouraged, because statecraft is scientific. There's a lot you do. Even economists have never found a formula that gives wealth to everyone. They have never. So if people are running a state, we are not going to say that they will always run the state well. There is where they legitimately fail, and therefore they need feedback. Instead, we are there bombarding to say, like, it becomes a power struggle, and that denies us consensus nationally.
Okay.
So when it comes to planning, one will plan this, the other is trying to plan to fail the plans. Even where we must agree that the decision by government on this is right. Have you ever found consensus in Uganda?
Oh, but that's a problem everywhere.
Yeah,
the US, which is billed as the best democracy in the world, they have the worst disagreement and lack of consensus.
You will never find homeless people in New York in any media of America that comes to Africa. Don't tell me about that. I studied them as well. You will never find. So we only see glamour about the US. But Dr. Mumuza knows they are poor people.
There are many
Worse than our poor people. So that's the national consensus I'm talking about. Our media, as in Africa, we have been made to celebrate government failures, to even those who are not supposed to. And therefore, that's a big challenge. So let's not say, when I say that, I have some reasons to back it up. So when it comes even to budget, you make those running government preoccupied with stopping, because it's a power struggle, you all know that. Yeah. So if we want to deal with the parliament, like somebody is talking here about the timing is bad, I have just explained, COVID does not mean that all other sectors of the economy stop. So if parliament must work, that's why the cars are being bought, because you're not going to say judiciary must stop.
Okay.
I've just said you're not going to say, because there's no oxygen in Mulago, Uganda police park all your cars. The police have provided security, law and order. Because COVID has not come to stop law and order.
Okay.
So what do? We need to be proper public policy analysts. Provide options, A, B, C, but not argue, I don't know how to call it, maybe whether has a word for it. You know, it is this, it must be that. Policy is a flexible affair. So the critics of government, and maybe some people in government, which is also clear, by the way, some people in government reason like they are not there to provide anything to people. And yet the people are paying them. So that is a problem that must be legitimately dealt with the wastage. But if we say members of parliament should not get vehicles for them to come and work, is there a democracy in the Western lens that works with a weaker parliament? It should be the interest of the public to build a stronger parliament. It helps maybe overcome some of the intellectual constipation that has pervaded the public service in Uganda. People enter public service and all they do, procedures. They are just managing processes. They don't care whether process lead to an outcome. And I've always said that is wrong for me. So how do you help? How do you give feedback to government that you are having rules and regulations that only help those who work to earn, but deliver nothing to the public? That's a legitimate feedback.
Okay.
But if you begin insulting government, those fellows, they are wasteful, you don't even have the information. What I want Odongotho, Honorable Lilian is here. I want the public to legitimately ask an MP, why are you not in the parliament? That's a legitimate what? Question. Why are you our MP and you're not in the parliament?
But
why are, yes.
Why are you not coming back?
Why are you not coming back
listen
to
our
us?
issues?
To our issues.
We gave you cars.
Now we're improving parliament.
But not about.
Why are you not? Because you know that should flow from the three cardinal functions of the MP.
Yes.
Legislation, representation, and oversight. So
therefore, a member of parliament must be in the house, in the plenary, either in the committee, or is in the constituency, getting feedback. Challenge.
Why are you not also representing our issues? Should that also be a legitimate question?
It.
And if their issue is this, are you going to discard it? Flowing from the questions they have just
What
asked?
I'm saying now, the issue should not be the car. The question is, you have got the car. Its purpose is to facilitate you to do your work.
Yes.
Are you doing work for which you have been given a car? That I would say, the public, I would give them feedback.
Okay.
That you guys, the public, is asking this.
Andrew, going forward, what are your thoughts on how to generate a kind of minimum agreement on this? Or is it a failed, even a failed proposal to think that can be done in a polity?
You see, Charles, there are two ways to analyze politics. They are what we call idealists. Idealists, they create an ideal situation which we should all aspire to. That's not to say that they are wrong. And then there are what we call realists. Realists look, so idealists deal with politics as it should be. Realists deal with politics as it is. I belong to a school of thought that is, I belong to realism. That how is politics? It does not matter whether it's an authoritarian state or a democratic state. I don't even believe in many of those distinctions. Let me give you an example. If you go to, the world's oldest democracy, the United States, if you're elected as a member of parliament, when you arrive in Congress, which is the House and the Senate, to make any decision, there will be lobbyists. These lobbyists represent powerful interest groups. They could be labor unions, they could be the IT industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the oil industry, the arms industry. Really, do you think the views of the voter matter a lot to the members of Congress? These powerful constituencies, like for example, the Israel lobby. I'm just reading a book by John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt on the Israel lobby in the United States to show that, in fact, the lobby is so strong that American foreign policy towards Israel is injurious to American interest. This is what these two guys are arguing. It is also injurious to Israel. So, even in a democracy, it is not necessarily true that democratic government represents the interests of the people or the general public. It may represent the interests of the most powerful constituencies that are able to bring pressure to bear upon political ambitious politicians and the political process. So, if we come to Uganda, we must ask ourselves, what are the most powerful influences on the government? What are the most powerful influences on the member of parliament? And the members of parliament in Uganda represent different constituencies which may have different interests. So, if you look at an ordinary member of parliament, is it true that the constituents, because Lillian here is ran an election and won, so I'm more inclined to listen to her views than mine, because me, I'm an armchair theoretician. For her, she's a practical politician who has gone to the public, asked them to give her their mandate. When they give her that mandate, what is the most important thing for them? Is it what she says in parliament? My experience with members of parliament I have talked to, that may be not the most important thing. For many voters, do you attend funerals, weddings? Do you contribute to fundraisings, to the church, to the local clinic? So if they are able to see in the constituency regularly, you actively participating in community actions, even if you said nothing in parliament, even if you never appeared in parliament, that may not be the criteria of judging a good MP. A good MP is one who demonstrates what can I call sensitivity to local issues. Where there are funerals, he buys a coffin, he attends the funeral, he contributes to the church, he contributes to the local clinic, he attends weddings and makes a contribution to people who are wedding and attends those weddings. Because this is a society, most of the rural constituencies, this is a society we live in. So as I have always said, rather I have been insisting in this discussion, that there is the textbook idea of what an MP should be and should do, and then there is the realistic one. Lillian, I want you to guide me on this, because I have so many friends who are MPs. I have my own sister Margaret, she's a member of parliament. So I know from the experience, when they go back to the constituency, they wake up Saturday morning and there are 50 people in their compound. And these people have come, they have different personal problems. They expect the MP to attend to these personal problems from their private income. So if you say an MP earns 30 million or 25 million or 40 million, is it true that this money goes to their private pocket, or it goes to sustain their large constituency of voters to whom they are accountable? Even when we talk about accountability, what is the accountability sought from the ordinary citizen? So if you ask me about the crisis we face in Africa, is this conflict between what are the popular expectations of the public and what are the textbook or inherited ideas we have about politics. If you ask an ordinary British voter, what do you expect of your MP? It may be very different from what an ordinary Ugandan voter thinks about the MP. For most Ugandan voters, if you ask me, they look at an MP as an agent of, quote unquote, Charles, development. But really, in the textbook theory, a Ugandan MP is not supposed to be an agent of development. You have the LC5 and the government of Uganda. They should be the ones building clinics. They should be the ones building roads and hospitals and all this. Yeah, even LC3. So there is LC3, LC5, and the central government. But there is more pressure on the MP than the LC5 chairman to deliver public goods and services in a particular area. So I honestly think that many times when we're having these intellectual debates, we base most of our arguments on the textbook theory of the role of an MP, and we ignore the reality of what happens on the ground in these constituencies. So if we have to capture to develop a better understanding of our politics, I think that we need to listen and understand what do people in Uganda think about. The final thing, I personally believe that a lot of the problems we see in our countries are locally generated. There are a lot of external influences, but they're locally generated. Even the demands to solve these problems are locally generated. For me, I feel that the problem always begins when it comes to us designing a solution to these problems. Whenever it comes to designing a solution, we retreat to a textbook theory, or a theory published in a textbook which was written by a professor at Harvard or Stanford, Yale or Oxford or Cambridge. But this theory explains the experience, by the way, I must say the idealized experience of Britain or France or the Western countries. And then we superimpose it on our country.
18th century.
Yes. So my own belief is that the problem we face is the mismatch between our demands and our solutions. The demands are local, the solutions are foreign. And every day we must ask ourselves, what is the most relevant solution given our very specific and unique context, given our social cleavages, our political circumstances, our economic situation. For example, the state of, if you ask me, the biggest problem with the state of Uganda is that we are just poor. Let me give just a simple example. Fred here has worked in the Ministry of Finance. If you get the total budget of the government of Uganda last financial year, it was about 32 trillion. 45, remember the other one is rolled over debt.
That's what you're saying.
Yes, it is rolled over debt. But if you said this is the money the government is going to spend, it was about 34 trillion. If you divide it by the total population of Uganda of 45 million estimate, you have about 700,000 or $190. You have about 700,000 shillings per person per year. That's $194 per person per year. If you get the budget of the United States, I think 10 trillion divided by the population of 340 million, you get about $21,750 per person per year. Charles, is it possible to govern a society where public spending per person is $21,000, okay, roughly $22,000, with the one where the public spending per person is $200? Public spending per capita on health in Uganda is about $13 for a whole year. In America, it's about $7,000. Is it possible for the government of Uganda to provide a basket of goods and services to all its citizens the way America does? No. So if economic you have context. So the final thing I can comment, Charles, is that you see, the character of the institutions of state we have in Uganda is designed on the basis of Western countries, our inherited traditions of the Western countries. But the resources of the government of Uganda, both human and financial, are very small. So the state in Uganda is overdeveloped in functions, but it is underdeveloped in capacity. But 1 second, Charles. The state is overdeveloped in functions, grossly underdeveloped in capacity. Financial and human, in terms of human skill, and financial in terms of money. So the challenge we face is therefore the huge gap between capacity or ability and what we have designed we must do and what our capacity is. In this match, the state's reach goes far beyond its grasp. And if you see things like incompetence, corruption, quarrels, and recriminations, they result from the mismatch between capacity and ability.
Okay, Honorable Aber, way forward. You are the people who are more pinched, and you are the people who are more, like Chris said, that you get more provoked and angry by the comments or misunderstanding of the people. Of course, we must still exist in reality, and work must be done. Way forward on how you think that this should be framed, this kind of dynamic.
First of all, I need to start with highlighting more on the issue Andrew Mwenda was was explaining, you see there are two issues we look at as a member of parliament. There is the issue of the needs of the people versus the wants. And if by all standards you deceive yourself that you're going to be the best legislator and focus on only your roles at legislative roles and you just concentrate on parliament work, I am telling you, in the next election, you will hear Lilian Abe's history. She was a member of parliament. They'll vote you out. MPs are actually categories of human beings who must be credited for multitasking. You are meant to do committee work. You're meant to legislate on the floor of parliament. You're meant to monitor these things. You're meant to work on a bill. But you also have to go home and attend the burials. Because at the end of the day, the burial you attended is actually what is more appealing at that moment. So the narrative must change. But who are the people going to change the narratives? If you look at the political structure of leadership in the whole country, I think we have enough political involvement or representation. From the LC1, then you have executive of the LC1, then you come to LC2, then LC3, LC4, LC5. But all this team, you may realize that on percentage, they are doing the required role to 20% versus, the 80% going into the normal appeasement of the electorate. So it's quite a challenge for a member of parliament. Sometimes you get on a dilemma and you really have to balance all this. If you don't, then you will not be re-elected. So for me, you will not tell me that I will not miss a sitting because I must attend every sitting and leave a burial in my constituency. I must go and attend. I must also act as a donor. When there is a challenge in my constituency, I must take there maybe sanitizers. I must take maybe some money and pay some students in school fees here and there. So all this, the country should pity MPs, to be honest. But well,
maybe putting myself in the position of a voter, the question, and an enlightened voter, the question then I would ask is, at what point did the rain begin beating MPs to go to that extent where they put themselves in the position of the developer? Because was it there in the 7th parliament? Was it there in the 6th parliament? It was not there.
I think as far as I can remember,
not as wild as it is today, not as wild as it is today, because there must have been that starting point. And if we are asking for a way forward, which is better for the country, because I don't want to assume that we are saying we should, the fire is blazing and becoming wilder, that we should go in that direction. I assume that MPs should be thinking that there should be a point where people begin to realize, maybe with communication, sensitization, education. Chris, here, they usually have leaflets in Parliament where they keep parading the message that no, MPs should not be the ones providing for this.
But
so that when people understand that this is not their work, then MPs should be relieved of making those promises.
You see,
as you continue, let me ask you, where did it come to that? If she says it, they will again go for her. Let it be categorical. The issue of community asking money from members of parliament was accelerated by civil society, who used to go to the up-country areas, call a meeting, and even pay a meeting allowance. Today, in most villages, even LOC one calling a meeting, people are asking what is there. It is the NGOs that took this mentality there.
At what point was that, Chris?
Around 94. Do
we have evidence of that?
I have evidence of it. There were so many NGOs in the north and the east. So, in a ability to spend their budgets, outreach programs, there were some money, people are giving them money. Now, I'm asking...
Are you saying the CSOs became alternatives of MPs?
No, not necessarily alternative of government. They had their own money.
So how did the burden get transferred from the CSOs that they are not paying, therefore we go to run to Honorable Aber.
They created a culture. So if it is to stop, don't ask Honorable Aber. Let it become a collective duty. The media
exactly,
and the civil society.
Just where I wanted to come in. You see, you people in the media, if I stand here and say, I am not going to give this because I think it's not part of my role, that's what you'll pick and magnify and say, this is this MP, I said ABCD. But you'll market the other one who has taken probably an ambulance, who has given, that's what you'll market. But also, I need to tell you, like for my case, let me give an example of northern Uganda. This is a poor region, which has been in the war for over 20 years. There were incomes. There's another attitude that has developed in the minds of our people. The actual attitude towards work has reduced. But also, because of the poverty and looking at a member of parliament who is closer to them, they will feel like you should provide immediate answers. So you are put in a fix that even if you know for sure that you can't, this is not your role, you must go ahead and do it. Because if you don't do it,
someone else will do it.
Someone else will do it, but you also be seen as if you have not addressed the issue.
Okay.
So the issue comes in that comes in at a level of who has to do what, and how do we change that narrative. And NP can't do that alone. The person needs the votes in the next election. I am also limited. By the way, if you may do a thorough research, you might not find 20 MPs who have left parliament and they can afford a life.
That's very true.
It is very true.
But
that's another debate, but it's a wide debate of its own.
No time has. Do you know, every day us in the press, right, in every single parliament, 50% of members of parliament receive less than 10% of their salary because it's cut to pay debts. Then about 70% or 80% of parliament receive about 30% of their salary. The pressures on a member of parliament in Uganda are so
But Andrew, that debate is very, very subjective, because I am very close to MPs. Chris knows, Aber knows, and you know Andrew. I know MPs who have been in parliament 2 terms and they have gone away, they are fine, they have planned. Then I know MPs who have been in parliament 3 terms and they have nothing, like you're saying. Exactly. So that becomes very subjective, and it is hard to standardize it, because that may be a call for what capacity of planning do you have? Many of them, I don't want to go into the details, but we need to end the discussion. When someone comes to parliament, the first thing they want to do, because they have been told you can access this loan, you can access the other, then you go for it madly. That is not the question of the parliament not facilitating you. That's the question of lack of your planning.
They'll always feel like they'll be re-elected. So they keep on planning to go back.
And that is a mad one.
And the voters are the ones who will say, we still want you come back. No one will tell you that you don't want you. So, okay. I mean, somebody keeps on planning, thinking he's going to come back. At the end of the day, he's auctioning the house, has picked a loan here. So it's really a very tricky situation.
Tough one. Doctor, wind up with us. Way forward.
I don't want to lose...
Chris, you're raising your hand?
Yes, because as a wind is up. My concluding remark, Doctor, here, because I trust, you know how I trust you in all this. One, I want us to live with that acceptance that, yes, we are all concerned about COVID, including the president is concerned, and his all our efforts is on defeating COVID. But fighting COVID does not make other sectors of the economy undesirable. So there is a bare minimum at which they must operate. Security must operate. That's a given. Agriculture must go on. So when you hear money being given to security, then you say, it's wastage. What kind of thinking is this? We, the intellectuals, must come up and say, no, we need security. Lastly, critique parliament. I'm very okay with it. Because even me, I'm impacted by the decisions made by parliament. But precisely, honestly speaking, if we are intellectuals, we want it to be, or we claim to be Odongotho, there is something called appreciative inquiry. Knowledge is generated by appreciating the contribution of others, and then you add.
Okay.
But where did we get this philosophy of thinking? Because you are in civil society, you know it all. When will you appreciate the role? At least come and say, to this extent, the executive has done a great job. However, we feel this should have been done. What I see on our platforms, social media.
But Chris, the evidence has been, I sampled
everybody
15
thinks
messages. Only one opposed. All the 14 said 200 million for parliament is okay for MPs, except the timing. Not
which I'm addressing.
14 have supported
I am giving information that the timing is not a problem.
I think we shouldn't blame the public out there. The public out there has appreciated.
Charles,
he said actually reasonably, and they are intelligent.
Charles, I'm addressing the issue of the timing. This affects the institution which employs me. That is the disclosure. But also I'm an intellectual.
And you know that institution is for the public?
Exactly. The timing we are talking about is propagandists too. Because I've just told you, first of all, why are schools trying to open? Because even in COVID, they still think education is important. Yes. Government has got competing priorities.
That's true.
So what I'm saying, we acknowledge that COVID is a dangerous situation. But let us also agree it does not stop other.
Perhaps, Charles, the question we should ask is when we say somebody is complaining about the timing, who is that somebody?
Exactly.
We need to know which constituency is worried about the timing and how representative are they of the general population of Uganda. It could be.
How else do you want us to sample them?
Odongotho.
During if we had time, I had here 581 messages. We could only choose 15. 14 that we read have said it is important.
Yes, but the guys who communicate to you electronically, yes,
but the timing. So
the people who communicate to you electronically, how representative are they? You see, if you go to do an opinion poll or a test sample for HIV or for sexual transmitted diseases in a community of sex workers, your sample is already distorted. You need to do it in the general population. You know when they say you must do a random sample must, here's the economist, I should tell you. So what you are doing there is a particular community, which is Uganda Echo Chamber on social media. It may actually not reflect the views of the general public of Uganda.
So how else would you sample it?
No, actually, that's my point.
A scientific opinion poll.
That's one of the
a scientific opinion poll. If you go on Twitter and ask a question.
Random also has methods. Random can be, you can say randomize, and we do it through phone calls. Randomized, we do it through interviews.
We must do analysis, not transporting rumors from point A to point B.
No,
that must stop.
Okay, we have run out of time.
I think a Twitter.
That we have agreed must.
So now how would the MPs come to work? If the issue of the cars are not sorted out, now how would they come to work?
My conclusion is where I began.
Yes.
Sampling parliament is itself wrong. Because these are not the only people receiving vehicles from government. Let's take the whole. And I think this is what they should take back to parliament. Let parliament ask government to present to them a vehicle, whatever policy, across government. And let's look at it from that context. You will discover you are debating, you are being penny wise and pound foolish. The losses in government related to vehicles is elsewhere. And you want to bring that into the picture. And Rumenda talked about the government budget. It's really very narrow. There are already two things that are driving a cost, and these are policy issues. The refinancing in government, the debt that matures and we are unable to pay, is about 8.5 trillion this year.
Yeah.
The new borrowing we are going to do this year is 2.9 trillion. Already you are talking about 11.4 trillion of debt this year alone, which is driving interest payment. This year is going to be 4.7 trillion. We are debating 100 billion. Now, you want to revisit all those things. So for me, they are oversight function. They are fundamental policy issues that they need to ask as oversight. Because until we address them, you will continue debating the 100 billion spent on MPs and not possibly the 4 trillion spent on all the other government vehicles. Let's have that policy.
Which is more comprehensive.
Let's discuss it comprehensively. Let's not just sample one thing, because we have already seen there is a problem of a mismatch between what society needs. And Andrew Mwenda said, the lobbyists carry the day. And it's not even about the voters. I want a conversation where an MP is not saying, I will buy coffins. Why in the first place are people dying? Prevent the death. Why are you buying an ambulance as an MP? That's not your responsibility. Your duty is to come and ask the executive, why are there no ambulances? Drive them to do it. Because if you buy an ambulance and there are no health workers, you are simply moving a person who would have died at home to go and die in the hospital. And then you buy a coffin.
The quality of the ambulance. Others are just modified.
Yeah, just these are taxis. So there is a bigger issue that Parliament should actually be asking, but Parliament now has jumped into the pond instead of saying, can we put a bridge over this swamp so that I don't have to carry people across the swamp? There is an entity called government, the executive supposed to do it, push them to do it, and that's why I've given them vehicles to come and deliberate on those issues. So I think let's not miss the issue of, this is a policy question.
Yeah.
And it should be addressed. Yeah. This sample has really given us that there is a certain distortion that is driving the budget crazy and making it unmanageable. Let's not forget URA is only going to give us 20 trillion. 4.7 of that is going into interest payment automatically. 5.5 is going into wages. People haven't even worked. And we are here debating on, I buy an ambulance, I buy a coffin. Why should you celebrate buying coffins for votes? Save those lives to begin with.
It is the realistic need.
It is the need for
the need, voters. The realistic need.
This is the narrative we need to change. I want to hear an MP
and the man to change it is the man on
I want to hear an MP saying, I'm not coming to buy you coffins, I'm going to prevent
the death. With the communication.
I have already, I started that, even UBC was trying that enlightenment. I am going to continue telling people the role of member of parliament.
Thank you
but
very
as
much.
analysts,
not buying coffins, but preventing the death.
I also challenge us that, Charles, let us be police analysts, not vendors of emotions and transporters of gossip from point B to point C.
Do you know that the public out there will call what you are saying an emotional opinion?
Yeah, but it's a fact.
So it is.
In the policy analysis, it's about facts and reason, not vending emotions.
The thing is, we just have to accept and respect each other's views, opinions, and let it be back and forth so that it is cyclic, like you said.
The first narrative we should change, not cars.
Exactly.
Settlement allowance.
Exactly.
Give it to them as a settlement. Allow it.
In policy, we say informed opinion.
Exactly.
We don't give feelings.
Thank you very much. Andrew Mwenda, Chris Obore, Dr. Muhumuza, and Honorable Lilian Aber. I want to apologize on behalf of Sarah Birete. She was caught up in, I think the flight was either postponed or she missed it. And all the way from Nairobi, but her network was not very good, so we lost her along the way, and but she was available for the show. I pray that we will have you again next week. But thanks to the gentleman and lady who made it to the studio here. Thanks so much to all of you out there who participated in the discussion. Keep the discussion going on the social media, on UBC, on hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. And our number that you can keep interacting with, the WhatsApp, is 0709 602 592. Keep sending your messages, and those we can share, we shall share. And don't miss the presidential address on COVID and related matters on Friday. That's the day after tomorrow, and it begins at 2 p.m. Thank you very much, and God bless you. God bless Uganda. Take care and ensure that you follow the SOPs, the standard operating procedures. COVID is still here with us. We are still losing Ugandans, and of course across the world, but let's take care and ensure that we follow the standard operating procedures to survive. Keep well. God bless you. Bye-bye.
The Universal Periodic Review, UPR, is a mechanism under the United Nations where member states review each other's human rights situation every 4 years. It's a voluntary process where all states are treated as equal partners.
The ultimate aim of the UPR is to improve on the human rights situation in all countries through technical assistance and cooperation.